shake your hands. I'll do that as we move through. Apologize for being a few minutes late. So I want to start with my opening statement, and then I'll go to the ranking member, and then we'll have our witnesses. So good morning again, and thank you all for being here. Very nice for you to come on such a critical issue to our nation's future. The need to modernize our federal environmental review and permitting processes are something we've talked about endlessly, both to grow our economy and also to improve our environmental stewardship. So I'm really excited about this hearing. Our witnesses will share their valuable perspectives and set the stage for the EPW's committee work on this important topic. To ensure we take a holistic view of these issues, we will keep this morning's hearing record open until March 21st to give all stakeholders the opportunity to share their experiences with the existing environmental review and permitting processes, identify challenges, and then hopefully to suggest potential solutions. For too long, critical projects such as energy and infrastructure projects, along with industrial projects as well, have been trapped in a cycle of redundant reviews, shifting goalposts, and regulatory uncertainty. In my home state of West Virginia, I've seen firsthand how these drive up in costs, these delays, not just for the projects, but for the American families who are paying for more energy, housing, and food as a result. Meanwhile, businesses lack the certainty necessary to make long-term investments, which can mean lost jobs, missed economic opportunities for communities, scarcity, and higher prices across the nation. It can also mean that the projects needed to deploy renewable energy technologies. It can also mean that projects needed to deploy renewable energies or to restore the environment are also stilted. The framework for our environmental review and permitting process is grounded in landmark laws under this committee's jurisdiction. NEPA requires federal agencies to consider environmental impacts on federally funded projects or before implementing their project. Other environmental and resource laws like the Clean Water Act, the Clean Air Act, and the Endangered Species Act rely on permits and operational requirements to ensure that critical projects are able to come to fruition in environmentally responsible ways. However, years of changes in guidance and regulations, administration to administration, and a complex web of judicial rulings have resulted in ever-expanding hodgepodge of often duplicative and contradictory requirements. While this confusing and complex body of administrative and common law has grown over the past century, Congress has not stepped in to provide the holistic clarifications and modernizations. In the absence of congressional action, certain parties have found creative ways to use the judicial process to delay, remand, or strike down projects and raise costs to discourage project sponsors from moving forward. As a result, environmental review and permitting processes have increased costs and delayed or stopped projects, including projects that would help achieve the goals in our environmental laws. Last week, the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee heard testimony from Nucor about how the need to obtain a Clean Water Act permit triggered significant delays based on required reviews under the Endangered Species Act and the National Historic Preservation Act. These permitting delays nearly thwarted what will be among the most environmentally friendly steel production facilities in the world, and that will employ over 1,000 people in Mason County, West Virginia. It literally took an act of Congress to permit the Mountain Valley Pipeline to move clean natural gas from West Virginia to our southern neighbors, and I'm sure they're loving it today as the temperatures are dipping. I heard it's 2 degrees in Austin, and it's snowing to beat the band in West Virginia right now, so it's cold everywhere. What is it in, I don't even,
47 below.
47 below, okay. Sorry, Austin, you just got tripped. Okay, Quarter H and Coalfield Expressways, 2 top highway priorities for the state of West Virginia that would improve safety and mobility, have both encountered multiple permitting delays under various environmental statutes. West Virginia waterline extension, broadband projects, bridge replacements have all faced federal permitting delays, and I'm sure my state is not unique. The problems we will explore today have been brewing for decades. However, this Congress, we have an opportunity, I think, to deliver meaningful bipartisan legislation that addresses these problems. I'm committed to working with Ranking Member Whitehouse, our colleagues on the Energy and Natural Resources Committee, and those House committee counterparts to produce a bill with meaningful reforms. Durable and implementable environmental review and permitting process reform must be bipartisan to be successful. My guiding principles for this effort are straightforward. The legislation that we develop must help all types of projects, not just politically favored projects or projects that will support the infrastructure needs of some Americans, but not others. We must provide clarity and transparency in the processes. And finally, our legislation needs to look at every stage of these processes to find efficiencies while balancing public health, the environment, and the needs of our economy. Let me be clear, modernizing these processes does not mean cutting corners or weakening environmental and public health protections. It means making the processes more efficient, more predictable, and more transparent so that the processes are not stuck in bureaucratic purgatory or endless litigation. Hardworking Americans, small businesses, and entrepreneurs want a government that works for them, not one that keeps them waiting for the benefits that many of the projects promise to bring in their communities and household budgets. So I look forward to the discussion today and learning about our witnesses' experience. I'm hopeful that we can hear some consensus on the issues that this committee must focus on in our attention so that we can develop our legislation. With that, I look forward to hearing from our witnesses today, beginning the effort together to deliver real solutions for the American people. And I now yield to the ranking member, Senator Whitehouse.
Thank you, Chairman. Off we go again on the bipartisan journey to catch the elusive white whale, permitting reform. This hearing's witnesses will highlight the challenges people face building a variety of projects, but as Chair Capito said, we want more. We'll keep this record open for that month to make sure we hear from all interested stakeholders about their experiences and their recommendations. Help us find where you encountered barriers and what solutions have worked well. We also know that permitting reform is not exclusive to our committee, so the Chair and I are already engaged with our colleagues in the Energy and Natural Resources Committee and in the House. A word of warning, however. Democrats cannot agree to any permitting reform unless and until the Trump administration ends its lawless disregard for congressional authority and judicial orders. Billions in obligated funds remain frozen behind a fog bank of silent executive contumacy, in blatant disregard of constitutional separation of powers, direct court orders, and basic principles of law. I have to note, as a former U.S. attorney, I'm particularly disgusted with DOJ, where things are so bad that deeply conservative career prosecutors have resigned rather than carry out corrupt orders from Trump cronies. But it's everywhere, and it's hurting people and projects. Until the administration shows that it will honor its oath to faithfully and impartially execute the laws, we can have zero confidence that any legislative compromise on permitting reform will be executed lawfully. It falls to my Republican friends to bring this lawless, unconstitutional madness to an end, and I wish them good luck in that. On energy, we have particular reason to doubt the Trump administration will faithfully execute any permitting law we pass. The president has declared a fake energy emergency, despite record production in America, and he's defined energy to exclude renewables, the fastest-growing energy sector, all after receiving minimum $100 million from fossil fuel donors. We are deep into a political quid pro quo paid for by the world's biggest polluters, and China is chortling at the spectacle. I don't see a path to getting a bill until this lawlessness stops, and I don't see a path for a bill that excludes offshore wind, an industry with great jobs, huge growth potential, and a supply chain that already extends into 40 states. The men and women building these projects do not want them stopped, as General President Booker can attest. Coastal states don't want them stopped. Leasing has occurred in federal waters off nearly every coastal state. Nor do the industries that support offshore wind, the Louisiana shipyards, the Midwest factories, the ports like Quonset, generating economic growth across our country. And neither do consumers, who overwhelmingly want cheaper, cleaner, and more reliable energy. Why would we want to pull America out of the clean energy race when investment last year topped $2 trillion, far exceeding investment in fossil fuels. What fools we'd be. If you want a future driven by Chinese innovation, Chinese industry, and Chinese power, keep it up. But you can't change the fact that the future of energy is clean and that if we're not part of it, we'll be left behind. The North American Electric Reliability Corporation, NERC, projects that peak demand will grow by 15% for summer peaks and 18% for winter peaks over the next 10 years, raising concerns about energy shortfalls, as our chair has pointed out in prior hearings. What would reduce the risk of those shortfalls? Better permitting. We need to build out a grid to meet current and future demand. 70% of transmission lines are more than 25 years old and showing their age. We know what we need to do. We need to build and fast. Right now, thousands of electricity generation projects are awaiting approval to connect to the grid. As of last April, 2.6 terawatts. Millions of engineering, construction, and manufacturing jobs stalled, in part because of our inability to build transmission lines. This must change. As I said last week, we have entered the era of climate consequences. The stuff the scientists warned us would happen is happening. Snicker all you want about Green New Deals. Ignore all you want collapsing coastlines, glaciers, coral reefs, and fisheries. Pope Francis said, slap Mother Nature, and she will slap you back. The economic slapback is here now in skyrocketing home insurance prices and failing home insurance markets. I will say it again, when climate havoc hits property insurance markets, it then hits mortgage markets, which then tanks property values so hard it can take down the whole economy. You may have missed it, but last week the Fed chairman in Senate testimony predicted that in the next 10 to 15 years there will be regions of the country where you can't get a mortgage anymore. When all that hits the fan, Americans will be very interested in who helped and who obstructed. Pretending solar and wind energy aren't even energy will look awfully dumb. And not permitting and building a clean, modern grid will look grossly negligent. So let's stop the lawbreaking and start the grid building together.
I like that last word. That's good. Our first witness is Jeremy Harrell. Mr. Harrell is the CEO of ClearPath, a nonprofit which advocates for policies that reduce global energy emissions. Mr. Harrell has served in a multitude of energy and environmental advisory positions on Capitol Hill, and he is the Chair Emeritus of the U.S. Nuclear Industry Council's Board of Directors. So, Mr. Harrell, I recognize you for 5 minutes. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Chairman Capito, for the kind introduction, and thank you, Ranking Member Whitehouse and members of the committee for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Jeremy Harrell, and I'm the Chief Executive Officer of ClearPath. America is at the dawn of a new era of unprecedented energy demand, fueled by robust economic growth, a revival of American manufacturing, and advances in AI and quantum computing. These developments have presented new challenges, yet offer immense opportunities for our country to build big. The regulatory process is not only unpredictable, but it is also one of the largest barriers to meeting energy, climate, and economic development goals at the federal, state, and local level. In the face of skyrocketing demand growth, building more energy resources has become more urgent. We need to let America build. NERC reported that annual demand growth rates are nearly double those of the last decade, when roughly 3 projects were added to the grid per day. But to meet that demand, we may need to build around 6 projects a day, or 16,000 facilities by 2035, and we'll need a broad suite of technologies to do it. These challenges are present in nearly every sector of the economy, from energy to housing to transportation projects. To be clear, the solution is not a development free-for-all. The regulatory environment must balance speed and safety, but the solution requires step change reform, not tweaks around the edges. Reforms that demand accountability and promote good outcomes as fast as possible should start with 3 key objectives. 1, leverage innovative American technologies. 2, expedite reviews. And 3, streamline judicial review of administrative actions. First, Congress could require more accountability, provide more transparency, and direct the use of modern technology. There is a clear need for more reliable information from federal agencies, ranging from the number of permits under review to how long they've been stuck in limbo. In many cases, Federal agencies are not even using the same systems or terminology. More transparent data will help with accountability and provide the public with information to participate. Congress should also consider the role of AI, machine learning, and other state-of-the-art technologies to reduce the burden of project reviews. Our system is still stuck in the 1990s. Technology reforms are the lowest hanging fruit for bipartisan action. Second, we must expedite the review process. Faster approvals for projects that bring net benefits and comply with existing environmental laws are essential to meeting our nation's needs. Congress could expand categorical exclusions to permit projects. CATXs are a one-time determination under NEPA that certain activities do not warrant the substantial data collection and review that come with site-specific EAs and EISs. However, they still require agency decisions for each site. There is bipartisan support in Congress to accelerate low-impact energy projects like geothermal exploration to eliminate redundant reviews. A permit-by-rule approach could also offer significant benefits, balancing administrative speed with safeguarding public health, safety, and the environment. To do this, the criteria must be well-defined, periodically reviewed, and aligned with the overall regulatory framework. Encouraging development in certain pre-qualified geographic areas could also accelerate projects. Previously disturbed lands or well-characterized areas like brownfields present opportunities to leverage electrical and mechanical infrastructure. The impacts of this development are minimal in most cases and are in or near the communities that need the economic growth the most. And lastly, the judicial review of agency actions must be reformed. The current system is tilted towards those who seek to delay or block projects. For example, a recent analysis found litigation delayed fossil energy and clean energy projects by an average of 4 years, and agencies won 71% of those challenges. Separately, an analysis on transmission projects found 24% of projects that completed environmental review faced litigation, and the agency won 88% of those cases. If major infrastructure projects are regularly delayed by legal challenges that are ultimately overturned, it is time to reassess whether our current system is protecting consumers or protecting project opponents. Congress could consider limiting legal challenges to plain errors related to the natural resources laws, narrowing the scope, and setting strict review timelines. Without changes, our nation is needlessly undermining our own economic development and climate goals. In conclusion, the U.S. is in a global competition for energy leadership. China and Russia are deploying billions of dollars around the world to advance their geostrategic interests, to control the sector, and connected supply chains. We must overcome our regulatory challenges to counter these efforts and meet domestic energy, economic, and environmental needs. It's time to let America build. Thank you.
Together. It'll be
I like that.
You like that? Okay.
Yeah. We
Our
may
next-
be onto something with that.
Our next witness, is Leah Pilkonis. Did I say your name properly? Thank you. General Counsel for the Associated General Contractors of America. Over her 25 career with AGC, Ms. Pilkonis has served in multiple leadership positions, including as Senior Environmental Counsel and Associated General Counsel for Construction and Environmental Risk Management. She is also a host of AGC's Constructor Cast podcast. So I now recognize Ms. Pilkonis for her opening statement.
Thank you very much. Chairman Capito, Ranking Member Whitehouse, and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I appreciate your leadership and bipartisan efforts to improve the federal environmental review and permitting processes. These efforts are critical to ensuring that we can deliver much-needed infrastructure projects in a timely and cost-effective manner while maintaining strong environmental protections. As General Counsel at the Associated General Contractors of America, I have learned how delays in environmental approvals don't just hold up projects. They cause workforce instability, drive up costs, and jeopardize investments in critical infrastructure. These delays also impact the communities that rely on these projects for jobs, economic growth, and modern, safe infrastructure. We need to ensure timely project approvals, minimize litigation risks, and maintain economic growth. Here are 4 ways Congress can help. 1, establish a uniform judicial review period. NEPA lawsuits can stall projects for years, even after they have undergone extensive environmental review. Litigation is increasingly being used as a tool to obstruct critical projects. This undermines planning, increases costs, and deters investments. While Congress has protected some infrastructure projects with a 150-day legal limit on challenges, most construction projects remain vulnerable for lawsuits for up to 6 years under the Administrative Procedures Act. AGC urges Congress to standardize the 150-day limited judicial review period for all critical infrastructure projects and eliminate unnecessary procedural hurdles that create prolonged uncertainty. Once a project receives final environmental approval, it should not remain in legal limbo for years. 2, align environmental reviews with congressional intent. The Bipartisan Fiscal Responsibility Act was designed to streamline environmental permitting and prevent unnecessary delays. However, CEQ's latest NEPA regulations contradict these reforms. Congress must hold agencies accountable to ensure NEPA implementation stays true to the FRA's intent and does not add new layers of bureaucracy that undermine project delivery. 3, prevent regulatory fragmentation. Recent court rulings and executive actions have highlighted the lack of clarity on NEPA implementation. Without clear statutory direction, agencies may adopt conflicting rules, making projects even more vulnerable to court challenges and forcing courts to interpret the law in a post-Chevron environment. Congress must act to ensure a consistent, reliable framework for environmental reviews across agencies. 4, make permitting reform a durable bipartisan legislative solution. Permitting rules should not shift with each administration. Congress must ensure agencies implement reforms consistently, and Congress must provide oversight to prevent regulatory overreach. The U.S. Supreme Court's Sackett decision provided much-needed clarity on federal jurisdiction under the Clean Water Act. However, the current conforming Waters of the U.S. regulations still fail to align with the ruling, creating uncertainty and unnecessary delays. AGC urges Congress to hold agencies accountable for properly implementing Sackett as intended. I want to share a few other ways Congress can help reduce Clean Water Act 404 permitting delays. Protect general permits, codify key exemptions, such as for roadside ditches and stormwater features, expedite jurisdictional determinations, ensure mitigation requirements are reasonable and backed by adequate mitigation credit availability. AGC supports bipartisan permitting reforms and urges Congress to ensure agencies follow congressional intent. Cutting red tape and limiting unnecessary litigation will help deliver critical infrastructure projects on time and on budget. Most importantly, Congress must provide certainty by ensuring that once environmental approvals are final agency actions, projects should not be threatened years later. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much. Our next witness is Carl Harris. Mr. Harris is the chairman of the board for the National Association of Home Builders. He has been building homes for 40 years in Wichita, Kansas, at Carl Harris Company, the firm he founded in 1985 with his father and sister. We want to thank him for spending time with us this morning before he heads to the NAHB International Builder Show later this week in Las Vegas. I will now recognize Mr. Harris for his opening statement.
Chairman Capito, Ranking Member Whitehouse, members of the committee, I appreciate the opportunity to appear before you today. As a small business owner, I understand the immense challenges that our members experience as they navigate the permitting process, because creating homes for Americans starts with successful permitting. The U.S. has a shortfall of over 1.5 million housing units, and the easy places to build homes have already been laid out, which means the nation's home builders are going to increasingly run into environmental permitting regulations for undeveloped land. We want to improve this regulatory process so that home builders can accomplish two fundamental goals: safeguarding the environment and creating attainable housing for Americans. Regrettably, American homebuyers are suffering through a record low housing attainability. According to NAHB's Priced Out study, 77% of buyers are unable to afford just the median price of a new home. Every small price increase has a sharp exclusionary effect. And on average, every $1,000 that gets added to a home's cost locks out 106,000 households will be priced out of the market. Uncertainty and delays in permitting needlessly add costs to the construction process, which increases home prices and pushes the American dream away from others among the market. While the Clean Water Act serves as a crucial foundation for protecting the nation's waterways, the implementation of certain aspects of Section 404 and mitigation bank approvals are a major source of frustration for our members. Let's consider a property owner who wants to build homes on undeveloped land. They want to know if the water features on their property fall under federal jurisdiction. To determine this and avoid federal penalties, they need an approved jurisdictional determination, an AGD. Unfortunately, obtaining AGDs are not prioritized under the Army Corps and take well over a year to obtain. Rather than languish waiting for an AGD, home builders will roll the dice and try for a quicker preliminary jurisdiction determination, known as a PJT. But a PJD has several hooks. It's not appealable. It allows water features to be considered jurisdictional, even if they're not covered by the Clean Water Act, and can preclude the use of the nationwide permit. We should be able to tell home builders if there are federal jurisdictional features on their property without forcing them into the problematic PJD. Congress created the streamlined nationwide permit under Section 404, which is meant to be completed within 60 days for minimal impacts on water features. But members routinely report that it's taking almost a year to obtain these, which is rivaling the time it takes to complete the more rigorous individual permit required for larger environmental impacts. This timeline is unacceptable for a permitting tool that is meant to be fast and predictable. Digging deeper under the 404, we have the Waters of the U.S. rule, which has been subject to litigation and administration changes. This nonstop whiplash has confounded our members about which water features on their property are federally jurisdictional, with key regulatory terms like continuous surface connection and relatively permanent water that have been left undefined and open to interpretation based on which Army Corps district you're in. This lack of harmony promotes confusion and uncertainty. As part of the 404 permitting, builders are often required to purchase mitigation credits to offset the impacts to wetlands. For example, a member in Ohio told us that the credits for his project cost about $140,000 due to the 2-to-1 mitigation requirement. When you break it down per home lot, this adds $10,000 to the cost of a new home. A driving force behind these exorbitant credit prices is the shortage of mitigation banks across the nation. It's extremely challenging for bank sponsors to come online, which disincentivizes participation. This leaves home builders competing against others over limited credits and drives up the cost. To be able to build the millions of housing units needed across this nation at an attainable price, the residential construction industry needs a more clear and predictable environmental permitting process. We need to prioritize the AJD process, recenter the nationwide permit, and encourage mitigation bank creation are all the ways we can do to chip away at this problem. I thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you very much. Our next witness is Brent Booker. Mr. Booker is the General President of the Labor's International Union of North America, and he is a third-generation member of Labor's Local 795 in North Albany, Indiana, and started his career in LiUNA's mailroom. Mr. Booker also served as director of the union's construction department and in various positions with North American building trades unions. I welcome you, and I now recognize you for your opening statement. Thank you.
Good morning, Chairman Capito, Ranking Member Whitehouse, and members of the committee. My name is Brent Booker, General President of the Labor's International Union in North America. LiUNA was founded over 120 years ago by immigrant workers fleeing their countries to seek not only a better life, but the American dream. Today, we're a strong, proud, diverse union representing over 530,000 workers across the United States and Canada. LiUNA members go to work every day, building and maintaining our nation's infrastructure. From our endless highways, bridges, and tunnels, to city skyscrapers, water treatment centers, to our nation's vast energy sector, our members' jobs touch every American's day-to-day life. Our nation's boom in energy production has provided an abundance of jobs for our membership. Our union has always promoted an all-of-the-above approach to energy production, renewables, oil and natural gas, hydro, nuclear, because we build it all. As union laborers, we take pride in our work. We're the safest, most productive, and well-trained workforce in the world. We get jobs done right, on time, the first time, safety, and on budget. LiUNA was deeply involved in both federal and state permitting. When we know a project will be built by hardworking laborers, we embed ourselves within the project's regulatory process to ensure it's approved in a timely manner. We're the folks in orange shirts you see at public utility hearings and community meetings. That's because in our business, predictability of projects is crucial. Our members move from job to job, stringing together the projects that over many years build their career. While we believe in a responsible approach to permitting infrastructure projects, it's clear that our current permitting process is broken. Whether it's purposely stalling the NEPA process or filing what feels like countless frivolous lawsuits, leaving projects in limbo and our members wondering when they'll get paid next. A project could be permitted, fully funded, and ready to go, then out of nowhere get hit with a deluge of lawsuits and get shut down. Unpredictability equals unemployment for our members. These projects aren't political to them. They're pathways to a middle-class way of life that include family-supporting wages, good health care benefits, and the ability to one day retire with dignity. If our members don't go to work, they don't get paid. So when a project is delayed months or even years, well, you try delivering that message to someone who has a mortgage payment due or has to buy school supplies for their kids. Adequate judicial review timelines must be included in any permitting reform package. Over the last decade, the pipeline industry, predominantly within natural gas, has provided thousands of laborers tens of millions of work hours. And as we continue to expand into more advanced energy sources, such as hydrogen and carbon capture and utilization, it's clear our training and skill sets will be vital to a cleaner energy future. And now we're seeing these same issues within the renewable sector. Since the passing of the Inflation Reduction Act, offshore wind has been a tremendous contributor of jobs for LiUNA members. Between the harbor and port build-outs, to turbine construction, to the installation of turbines themselves, all along our nation's coastlines, LiUNA members are building offshore wind projects at a rate like never before, including America's first offshore wind project and Rhode Island's Block Island. Unfortunately, the administration's halt on offshore lease sales has upended the wind production market and has led to projects completely withdrawing their construction plans, costing laborers their jobs. One project is the Starboard Wind Project, a 1,184 megawatt project proposed by Ørsted about 30 miles south of Martha's Vineyard, which was expected to power upwards of 600,000 homes. This one hits home for me. I was proud to have helped negotiate and implement the National Offshore Wind Agreement back in 2022 on behalf of the building trades. This agreement was going to bring back thousands of good union jobs to workers across the country. Now, many of these projects are at risk of being terminated, causing us to lose significantly more jobs than we did on the Keystone XL pipeline, once again leaving our members high and dry. We must put an end to projects for being used as pawns on a political chessboard, because it's American workers that pay the price. With the simple swipe of the pen, or lack thereof in this case, these decisions impact the lives of the members we proudly represent and their communities. If you take away one thing from my testimony today, please let it be this. It's LiUNA members who go to work every day, building the America we all use. Whether it's turning the lights on in the morning or commuting to work on a highway, it's likely a laborer had a hand in it. This isn't about politics. It's about ensuring we continue our energy independence and dominating in a market that when we don't compete, allows us to fall to our adversaries. For LiUNA, above all, it's about ensuring our members are able to go to a job that affords them the opportunity to be firmly entrenched in the middle class. And to be clear, these aren't just jobs. They're careers that give our members and their families a chance to thrive. They're paychecks that ensure American workers are contributing to their community and aren't forced to rely on the government to make ends meet. They're lifelines that allow construction workers to retire with dignity after they've built the America we all enjoy. For LiUNA members, these projects are delivering on the promise of the American dream, which is why I thank you for granting me the opportunity to speak with you today, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Booker. Appreciate it. And finally, our last witness is Nicole Pavia. I say that correctly? Thank you. The Director of Clean Energy Infrastructure Deployment at the Clean Air Task Force. She is responsible for leading the organization's infrastructure team and previously worked in consulting, concentrating on energy and sustainability projects, and she is a fellow Duke University alumna.
That's right.
A Blue Devil.
That's right. Chairman Capito, Ranking Member Whitehouse, and members of the committee, thank you very much for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Nicole Pavia, and I'm the Program Director for Clean Energy Infrastructure Deployment at the Clean Air Task Force, or CATF. CATF is a nonprofit, non-ideological advocacy group with nearly 30 years of experience in advancing policy and technology change needed to achieve a zero-emissions, high-energy economy at affordable cost. In my role, I lead CATF's work to identify and address barriers, be they regulatory, permitting, financing, or social, holding back deployment of clean energy technologies at the pace and scale we need to decarbonize. One of our priority technologies is electricity transmission. Long-range, interstate, and interregional transmission lines are critical pieces of our energy system, and we are not building enough of these lines to meet reliability, security, affordability, load growth, and clean generation needs. Today, significant wholesale electricity price differences between and within regions exist due to transmission system congestion. Regions afflicted by severe weather are unable to access enough electricity from neighboring regions, leading to economic damage and, tragically, loss of life. And 2,600 gigawatts, or 2.6 terawatts, of energy capacity, 95% of which is zero-emitting or storage capacity, sits in interconnection queues today, waiting for an opportunity to plug into the grid. The cumulative effect of our inability to modernize and update our transmission system is reflected well in North American Electric Reliability Corporation's latest long-term reliability assessment. Most of the North American bulk power system faces increasing resource and energy adequacy challenges, just as projections show increasing demand growth. Given these urgent circumstances, why have long-range transmission investment and deployment rates decreased and not increased over the past decade? Some have pointed to federal transmission permitting processes and environmental review processes under the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, as key culprits. But little evidence and data existed to understand the truth of these claims. Therefore, CATF partnered with the Niskanen Center to start to build the evidentiary record around the drivers of delay in the federal transmission permitting process. We consolidated and analyzed publicly available data and interviewed developers, permitting officials, and other expert stakeholders. As explained further in my written testimony, environmental reviews under NEPA can certainly be improved. But fundamentally, we found that the provisions of NEPA are not to blame for the most significant delays and inefficiencies in transmission deployment. The most frequently cited slowdowns were largely process and resource-oriented. Most stemmed from gaps in leadership and federal agency coordination, lack of steady appropriations for permitting-related tasks, insufficient permitting expertise at agencies, data inaccessibility, and local opposition to and lack of state support for nationally beneficial projects. These are not all permitting-specific blockers, but they often flare up throughout the course of the permitting process. Another issue is the regulatory differences between jurisdictions through which long-distance transmission lines may pass. Lines crossing state or tribal borders are not subject only to federal permitting requirements, but also to the requirements of all state and tribal governments traversed. These requirements can be uncoordinated or duplicative, and state and tribal resource constraints for permitting are evident. Overall, prioritization of a modernized, secure, and resilient transmission network will require a departure from the status quo. This includes reforms to the federal review process, but it also requires addressing the key drivers of transmission delay as identified in our report. In addition to speeding permitting timelines, we should be increasing specialized agency capacity to efficiently execute permitting. And we should consolidate siting and permitting authorities for interstate transmission projects in the national interest under the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, just as they are for interstate natural gas pipeline projects. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. And I'm going to begin with a question for all witnesses. I believe I know the answer to this one, but both Republican and Democrat administrations over the last couple of decades have recognized the need to address the environmental review process, and those administrations have taken efforts through changes to regulations and guidance to do so. Despite these efforts, federal environmental review and permitting challenges persist. So this is a yes/no. I would like to ask each of you, do you agree that Congress must come together to develop a bipartisan bill to tackle these challenging issues? Mr. Harrell, we'll just go down the line there.
Yes, Senator.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, Senator.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Good. Thought I knew the answer to that. Ms. Balcones, under current law and regulation, projects can take years or even decades to progress from concept to completing the NEPA process. And what are the real-world impacts of this lengthy timeline for projects on consumers of goods and services that your members produce?
Thank you, Senator, for that question.
And then, Mr. Harris, I'm going to go to you with the same question. Go ahead. Excuse me.
For the construction industry, delays cause uncertainty, and they also cause workforce instability. Our contractors can't commit to hiring workers. They can't order materials when there are delays on breaking ground for projects, often because they're tied up for years with lawsuits. Delays also drive up costs. They increase project costs as inflation and material shortages make projects more expensive over time. Delays also increase investments. Delays are preventing AGC members from building our quality of life and delivering safe projects that are going to benefit communities.
Cross country. Mr. Harris, your home building.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The cost of permitting adds to the cost of housing. And every time, as I said in my testimony, every time you raise the cost of a house $1,000, you lock out 106,000 family units. That's substantial. You know, we speak about the value of home ownership. Well, the value of home ownership is good for everyone. It stabilizes families, it stabilizes neighborhoods, it stabilizes communities, employee bases, volunteer bases. Home ownership is a public good. And in trying to increase or make better the processes for permitting, then we can decrease the cost. The time value of money for developers, home builders, add to the cost of a house. And right now, where we've seen the average cost of a house go up $90,000 in the last 2.5 years, we have locked so many people out of the American dream.
Thank you. And I know there's a shortage as well, so we can get into that maybe later. I want to ask about judicial review. It came up in almost everybody's testimony. Many projects are targeted with litigation all throughout the process. The resulting legal costs and project delays can be enough to stop a project, which happened with our Atlantic Coast Pipeline in West Virginia. Mr. Booker, will you describe some of your members' experience with litigation after EIS or EA is finalized? You have your permits at hand, and then you can't go forward. You kind of outlined it in your